You know, we had some nice weather for it actually. And driving around to the different sites, and I think there was one weekend that was kind of like mediocre, if you will, for weather, where it was a little cooler, a little bit wetter, but for the most part, pretty nice days. And then even at that Southwest transfer site where there's been a lot of dust in the past, it seemed like the weather was just right where it kept that dust down, which was nice. All right. So anyway, right, we can't talk about anything without talking about COVID and what it's changed for us over this last year. So as we're kind of going into FireFree this year, and then when COVID first rolled out in March, Ed and I right away, we discussed kind of what that was going to be doing to FireFree, and our worst fear was that we were going to have to cancel it. There'd already been quite a bit of work into it. We're putting out some of the first press releases, and then we're holding off on some of them as we weren't too sure what was going to happen with it. And then, as we're kind of looking at what was coming down the line, a burn ban came out, and we were talking about the burn ban, and we discussed, the alternatives. I talked with Chief Johnson and sisters about this. As the burn ban rolled out, having that FireFree was a great avenue to be able to give people to as an alternative to burning. So we discussed that quite a bit, and then we weren't too sure still how that was going to go, right? Because it's not ultimately up to us; it's up to the Board of County Commissioners and kind of deciding where we're headed with all that. But as we were kind of watching things roll out, as we're coming towards May, we were realizing people had lots of time on their hands. We were talking with Waste Management over there, and I was talking with Chad Santola, who talked or was that just last month? Talked last month about FireFree. Mid-April, things were busy at the landfill. They're backing out all the way out onto 97, down to the Southwest transfer site, and then up here at that landfill, they're backing out onto Highway 27. So a lot of time on people's hands at home, and even myself here around the house, I've gotten quite a bit done. But whether it was yard debris or just regular trash coming into the dump, they were busy already. So solid waste was already kind of working underneath. They had a work plan over there that was working for them to keep their social distancing. So all of that was working out all right. So as we kind of lined up and we talked with the Board of County Commissioners, and it was being laid out of how everything was looking, we had kind of those three options I have listed there. The no change, so we go with the days that were already planned, we cancel it, or we add days to it. And ultimately, we had days added to it. So we came up with the new dates of May 9th through the 24th, which was a decent change from a normal year. So that was 3 weekends plus the 2 weeks in between. And the normal year would have been 2 weekends and the 1 week in between. And so quite a few more days. So that right away, obviously, that's several things that we had to think about with impacts to how everything runs. And the two big questions out there, at least for myself, especially being new to it, was like, what are we going to do about volunteers? Because historically, FireFree ran off of a lot of volunteers. So there's quite a few people that were coming out to participate. And then with COVID, that was, think about May 9th through the 24th and what we were doing. Everybody was practicing their social distancing. Everybody was wearing masks. Everybody was, staying at home, cleaning their yards. But we knew the volunteers were likely going to be out. A lot of agencies were still working through how that looked for their own work plans. So some of the agency partnership was in question as well. And then we had the West Side site, which was a good success last year, great success, and everybody was participated in that. So there's lots of phone calls inquiring about that as we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with it. So Ed and I met with Brooks Resources out there at the tree farm and talked through their site, the way that it would work logistically for vehicles pulling through, but also what could they provide for those for the weekends. And a lot of that hinged on what we could provide as volunteers, because if I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but that West Side site is a privately owned site. It's not a transfer station like the FireFree or Negus or the Southwest transfer station. It's privately owned, so it's been staffed with volunteers and not with any other personnel. So we had to figure out volunteers there. All the other sites, as far as volunteers, was talking with waste management that brought on more people to be able to staff that stuff, all those other sites up to be able to fill in the gaps of where we didn't have the volunteers. And the volunteers in the past, occasionally they'd help you unload your debris, but we definitely, this year, there was going to be none of that. So solid waste step forward for that, and that's mostly clearing that debris back, allowing people to pull in, back up, unload it themselves, and pull out, and then operating the clicker to count the vehicles that came through and recording the amount of debris. So the west side, back to that one, Bend Fire stepped up and said, yeah, we'll still be able to staff that. We'll be able to, count the loads, let people come through. And then Brooks Resource said no problem, they would provide it. So that one, instead of running those full days, it ran only on the weekends, which still was 3 weekends versus the 1 weekend that it normally would operate. So pretty big time frame, and I guess I have expectations down there, and I guess those expectations were kind of my own, but talking with everybody, I think as we were going into it, yeah, we had the 3 weekends and the 2 weeks in between, and mostly what we were thinking was like, well, we'll probably get a bit of an influx of people early on, but overall the trend will stay pretty flat, pretty low. We won't see a big push of folks. And those transfer sites were open not just on the weekends, but through the week as well. So that was a little different than usual. And so the numbers in the end, right, we can go through each one of these, but really, really impressive for the amount of stuff, the amount of debris that came in. So if you look at 2019 there, we bumped just a little over 30,000 cubic yards. And that's a lot of cubic yards. So that's usually about half of what comes into solid waste for the year normally. And then this year we went over 60,000. So we pretty much doubled what would normally come in during the FireFree event. So just a lot of debris that came in. It's hard to kind of put that in perspective, but as Ed's been talking with waste management, essentially during that one event, we brought in as much as what would be brought in for an entire year at the not landfill. So a lot of stuff, lots of good work going on out there. I think, talking with Chad, if you remember the talk last week, they weren't sure what they're going to do with it. I'd be curious to see what does end up happening. They said that they use it as a cover for the trash at the landfill as they go through the year. But with this amount of debris, I'm wondering how much will end up in the landfill and how much ends up as cover. Either way, the plan of extending the dates, I mean, if you look at it, that obviously worked. I think it was pretty awesome to see that we had that much stuff come in and we had all those days open to it, and definitely contribute a lot of that to COVID, but also I think we could definitely contribute a ton of it to our neighborhoods, right? We've got a lot of neighborhoods, not only our individual residents doing it, but a lot of neighborhoods have been really pushing to plan events and then really work around the FireFree. And I think that part of how we were seeing this trend kind of stayed up higher than what we were expecting was that we had a bigger window for our communities to plan around to be able to bring that debris in. And so there's I've got a ton of graphs, right? And I can look at these in a million different ways. And I don't want to go through each one of these, but you can see the weekend spikes out of them, kind of when people brought stuff in. But before I go too far, does anybody have any individual one that they want to look at? Because if we back up and think about how many sites we have with not landfill, there's several of them, which means that I have several of graphs. And I don't want to go through each one individually unless we really need to, if that's fair. Everybody's on mute, so it's kind of, I feel like I'm talking to myself.
I think if nobody else has one, Boone, one that I found pretty substantial, might be interesting, outside of the obvious increase at not landfill next to where a majority of the people live, but the Southwest transfer station really showed a huge increase. So that one might be interesting.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point. I was looking at that.
Probably almost tripled what they normally bring in. So they were definitely leading the pack.
Yeah, and you know, when I traveled around to all the different sites and talked to them, that one was like consistent, very, very consistent down there with the people coming in. Fry Rear had gone up there and they were busy on that first weekend and they trailed off pretty quickly. But I think the Lapine area, just, you know, that South County area, there's just so many people down there. And that definitely showed in the phone calls that came in as well. You know, when we were before that decision to extend the dates came out, and I think everybody was kind of feeling a little bit anxious about how it was going to happen this year. And I know myself, with the phone calls coming in, a lot of them that I had coming in was almost like receiving hate mail. People were upset that FireFree was getting canceled and they wanted to know who was making all these stupid decisions. And the people are like, you know, every once in a while I'd answer the phone and I'd practically get yelled at for possibly canceling FireFree, because webpage I put up there that we are deciding what to do about it, you know, figuring that we'd probably be changing the dates on it. But boy, I got a lot of phone calls about canceling it, and that was such a bad idea. We've already got a burn ban in place. And I think the one that took the cake for me was, I can't believe you guys have a burn ban in place right now. And now you're going to end up lifting it in the middle of fire season, and we're going to burn everything down. Houses and forests are going to burn up because we're going to be burning in the middle of the summer. It just made me chuckle. I'm like, there's always a burn ban in the middle of the summer during fire season. So now we're not going to lift it. And then it was, you know, and he went on to go on, now you're canceling FireFree. Well,
Tony DeBone here. So I want to thank everybody for participating, getting the word out. It truly is the culture of Central Oregon right now. And those comments just now talking about how people engaged with you because we weren't publishing the dates is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. That really tells us that people are looking forward to it, planning for it, expecting it. So it was good. You know, we did debate, well, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Came up with those 3 weekends and the weeks in between, which is wonderful. Southwest, we saw, every time I drove by, there was a trailer loaded going in there whenever it was open. So it's really good that that happened. I didn't end up getting out there to volunteer. I was thinking I was going to help with traffic at some point or, you know, some Saturday morning, but those days slipped away from me real quick. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things, and yeah, the volume speaks for itself. One of the things that this group should understand is the cost of that, because that is what we talk about at the board meeting. It's a contract, it's a schedule of getting a grinder out there at the remote sites, and it's transportation. I think it was like a $300,000 commitment or something around though, and it's a variable because you don't know exactly what's coming in. So people need to understand that. Solid Waste is our partner on that. You know, Solid Waste is an enterprise fund. It has its own income and expense. Our Solid Waste are the people's business of Solid Waste. So I think, and you know, Boone and Ed, you can help me with, you know, where did that money come from this year? As I say, I made the decision, but I'm trying to get clear on what we did there. But it's a big expense.
Yeah, you know, and going back to just thinking about expenses and people paying for it and it being a free event, prior to it being the free event, you know, Solid Waste, and they're getting everybody backed out to the highway. And I was talking to Tim Shimke over there at Solid Waste. He said, oh yeah, we get backed out there. And he's like, we get so many people. He's like, we just have to do it. We have to turn it free already anyway. So we may as well be running the event now. And that was clear back in April. So they get so many people backed out, and just for safety reasons, they just start ushering them through to get it processed, just to keep everyone safe.
Did have one question from Ray, so that and others might wonder as well if you're not commonly in the south part of the county. So the Southwest Transfer Station is located off of Highway 97. I guess I'd say it's maybe halfway between Sun River and La Pine, maybe a little closer to Sun River. But so the communities that use that are all the communities in the Upper Deschutes area and the greater La Pine area. So you've got, of course, the city of La Pine, but all the different other subdivisions and neighborhoods that are outside of the city. And they're substantial. If you haven't been off of Highway 97 traveling south, there's about 10,000 private tax lots that of people that live in the woods out there, and so they have a significant amount of defensible space, yard debris material, and so that I think this was a good opportunity for them, being in the most forested, thickest with all the lodgepole pine that grows down there. Some of the most forested neighborhoods are in that part of the county, so this was a good opportunity for them to get rid of that material.
Yeah, and then I think, Tony, you were asking about costs. I don't have any costs myself yet. I don't know what they are, but I think Ed's already been talking with Chad about getting some numbers of like total what comes in through all of waste management and Republic Services. I would assume that cost is one of those things you guys are looking at as well. Ed, is that correct or no?
Correct. Yeah, there was some unknown, as Commissioner DeVone indicated. If you don't know the amount, then you don't know the cost. And of course, the cost varies depending on which site it goes to. So, and this relates to another question that Ray just sent me is the debris chipped on site or at not? So each of the sites is chipped on site. I think they started with the west side site so that we get that off of the, since we're kind of a guest there, they finished that up a week or so ago. I noticed yesterday that they are chipping it or grinding it at knot right now. But yeah, some of those costs are still to be somewhat determined and are being covered currently out of just the solid waste revenues. But yeah, so all those sites get chipped and then they chip those into a chip van, and then those get transported to Knott landfill.
Hey guys, this is Greg Bryant, and I was just wondering if you think that the increase, some of the increases, because there was a burden ban versus a normal year, you might not have a burden ban. The increase on the cubic yardage.
I think so. I don't know everyone else's opinion, but from the phone calls and the people that I talked to, you know, a lot of them were upset about the burn ban, and I pushed them in the direction of the FireFree event, and they were responsive to it. So I would assume there were several that figured that out on their own, plus all the people I talked with. Yeah. But and then being the first year, you know, speaking of phone stuff, it was interesting. I talked to Allison before it was ramping up, and she said, "Yeah, one year I just put on my voicemail what the times were, just because there were so many calls coming in." It was only like a day or two later I was at that point. I was like, all right, time to change my voicemail, because it was nonstop phone calls. I was not getting anything done besides answering the call and either listening to a rant or listening to people appreciate it, because there was a lot of people. You know, that went right to what Tony said a minute ago, is that you know, seeing the passion that people have for it is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So in southern Deschutes County, a lot of 1 acre parcels, kind of up and down Day Road, the grid pattern. There's some, you know, different neighborhood layouts out here. But my point is, I would advocate for consistent spring and fall cleanup fires. You know, I mean, there is so much biomass that transferring it to a transfer site is almost silly. So I do that as a property owner. And I've had this discussion, in fact, thinking, okay, is it better for me to load it up in a trailer and bring it to somewhere? I don't advocate for that for everybody. You know, a smaller lot, or your first 5 feet around your house if you don't want to have a fire, or if you missed opportunity for a spring or a fall cleanup, it's good to be able to dispose of some, some of that biomass. But I mean, if you have a 1 acre parcel in Lapine and it's thick with small trees, every year you need to do some trimming. You should have a small cleanup fire or a couple small cleanup fires on a weekend or two. So I'm just letting in the Project Wildfire group. That's a lot different than, Deschutes River Woods where you're at, Greg. I know that, the smoke just lays in there and it's all ponderosa pine needles. We think of it as the geographic areas also what we're trying to do.
Okay. Gotcha.
Well, and I would maybe note just kind of for Lapine in general, there has been 2 escape debris burns in the last 2 years that have caused some damage down here. So just kind of the general feeling in some of, the local Facebook groups and kind of the local folks that I chat with, folks are getting more uncomfortable with kind of pushing the limits of outdoor debris burning. There was, unfortunately a couple folks that made a bad decision that ended up in some property damage with their outdoor debris burning. And I would note, Greg, just at least in my tenure, if you see kind of that spike in 2015, it's nowhere near 2020. 2015 was a year that they shut down burning May 1. And so a lot more folks, that year I think we brought in, I think it was like 34,000 cubic yards as opposed to like normal, that 27, 29. So folks really do pay attention. If burning is shut down, it's an alternative for folks to use FireFree.
Right.
Well, Allison, good point. I know both of those folks. They're both in my neighborhood, right? So I know those guys. As I say, I mean, we got to be clear on what the message is, though. I mean, because if you have biomass, you don't have a dump trailer in your car, and you've got plenty of land, safe burning with, regulations and thoughtfulness in place is something I would still advocate for. So, as a group, Project Wildfire, let's get clear on what our message is. Because, as I say, it's just the volume. It's a function of volume. How much would you transfer to a station? How much does it cost? How easy is it to, pile it up and burn it in a coordinated fashion and being very safe? Good point. Be very safe.
They're both tools, right? So I did have one other question from Bob Pulley asked, is there a biofuels operation that would buy this chip material? No, unfortunately, there's not. There was a short period of time around 2009, 2010 that Chad actually talked about when he presented with us last month, where all the right ingredients came into play where we could use some of that to go to biofuels. But the combination of the haul cost, you're either talking about taking it at least to the Columbia River Gorge or Southwest Oregon, Medford area is our nearest places. So huge transportation costs combined with the fact that at that time there was a short period of time where there was a tax incentive to utilize that, along with the fact that there was a downturn in the timber industry and they didn't have the other supplies coming in. But this is a very low quality material. They do not like to use this stuff if at all possible because just of the amount of ash that it creates because of the dirt and other residuals. So this is it's a, as Commissioner Ramon indicates, it's great that people options as far as how to get rid of it. So it'll be something we'll be thinking about. But anything else, Boone, before we kind of move on to the roundtable?
Yeah, I had a couple of things I wanted to run through. Just a time check. Yeah, I do actually. I want to run through a couple of points, just kind of run through our Firewise communities, just kind of an update of where we're at with that, and then a little bit of the Firewise workshops that we put together just to kind of show what we had done there. So, right, can you guys hold on really fast? I have to get my kids to stop fighting. I will be right back. I'm so sorry.
one of the realities of trying to work.
Are we recording? This could go on the blooper reels if something exciting happens.
Can we talk about Boone while he's out of the room?
Sorry, everybody. I totally was starting to talk, and then they were just like yelling at each other right outside the door. I don't know if you guys see it or not. What is going on? Okay. Yeah, right. So I wanted to just kind of hit on our communities, because I think it's worth mentioning how much work everybody put into it as far as communities and getting all of those events planned. There was quite a bit that we heard from over the last few weeks that are just awesome. And I know there's lots out there that I won't be able to hit them all and talk about it, but there was some good mentions that I thought were fairly impressive. And one was I have a short list, and sorry if I missed your community. But Indian Ford was a new community that we had just became Firewise, and that was just in December of 2019. And already this event, they did a free yard debris pickup that was coordinated with the FireFree drop off, and it was awesome to see them kind of work together. And it was their first one. I got the feeling that they weren't real. I think they thought they were going to get more people participating, but it was their first year, and I actually thought they did pretty good for the first year. They got just shy of half their community was involved, and it's just going to build more momentum. Sage Meadows also did a grant program. I think some of that was going to FireFree as well. Tillicum Village, Bert Neumeyer, I don't know if he's on today. I believe he is, but they had great turnout this year as well, more than what they'd ever had in past years. Woodside Ranch, Ray had mentioned that there were people that hadn't done work in the past that took and actually did work this year that hadn't at all, that didn't want to participate, but are kind of coming forward and beginning to see the need for it. And then we're slowly increasing our communities, right? And then as we look at how many Firewise communities we have out there, I think I was looking at the numbers this morning, and if I read them right, because I've got a couple that come into it doesn't really matter. Either way, looking at the numbers, looks like we have about 41 Firewise communities now. That's a lot. Like if you look across the state of Oregon, I don't believe any of the other counties no one county has that many communities. So pretty impressive. I think it's something to be proud of. And then we've got several communities that are working their way through. Trout Creek just became Firewise. Mountain High is in the process right now. I think we're getting pretty close there. Boonesboro up on the north side of Bend is also in the process. They're getting pretty close as well. And then Sundance is in the beginning phases. So we're still moving forward. Lots of good work happening. Just kind of to dovetail that into what we did recently with our Firewise communities, we did that Firewise workshop where we did 3 different workshops online that we changed from doing one workshop where we thought we were going to do like a round table of different discussions. And instead of doing those round tables, we pulled everybody together through Zoom, same platform. We did breakout groups, and actually worked out pretty good. But if you go to our Project Wildfire webpage, if you're interested in any of that, up here across the top are the different sections. You can either get to it by going to our resources into Firewise off its main webpage, or it pops up here on the side as our Firewise workshops. And we put all the, take a second for that to load up. But I put all the resources there. But I put all the resources there. We recorded all of those meetings. So if you wanted to listen through them, you can. These were, of course, aimed at kind of making that connection across the communities. So it's not like edge of your seat excitement, but it's a really nice way to see how you're not alone in all of your efforts. Like there's a lot of communities that have worked through this process. Everybody's had their stumbling blocks, and there's ways to get through all of that. And of course, reaching out to myself, I can help anybody go through it. But we had quite a few guest speakers. All the different resources that we talked about during those workshops is on here. And I'll be adding more stuff to it. There's more things that have just come in recently. And so if you're interested in that, it's on the Project Wildfire webpage, and then it's up on the top underneath resources, Firewise, and you'll find the workshops. So just a plug for that stuff that just concluded. And I think that's it, Ed, if you wanted to jump back in there.
Okay, great. Any questions for Boone real quick? Then we'll move on to our just a quick round of updates from anybody that wants to share any. If you don't see any, then I'll move on. All right. I do not see any. So I am going to move on. We'll just do a quick round of updates for those that want to share. If you don't, you can always send me or just put up no update in the chat. That's fine. Since I started from the top last time, I'm going to start from the bottom this time and just work up my list here. And then if I miss you at the end, we'll have one call because the names do juggle around some. But we'll start with Zechariah. Any updates from Deschutes County Community Development Department?
Thanks, Ed, and good morning, everyone. The only update I have is just to share with you all that the Community Development Department is beginning discussions on how we can engage the community following up on our Wildfire Mitigation Advisory Committee. No plans have been made yet, but we did, I think I shared with you several months ago, we received a grant from DLCD, the State Department of Land Conservation and Development, to do a community outreach on the WMAX recommendations and learning about what the community is interested in supporting from those recommendations that the WMAX supported. So we're starting to begin discussions of what a public outreach involvement program might look like. So that's, if you have any great ideas, please be in touch. But like I said, no plans made yet, just beginning to think that we are acknowledging we may be in this online environment for the foreseeable future. And instead of requiring or just hoping to do in person, maybe we should pivot and figure out some sort of digital public engagement plan we can do. So welcome any creative ideas that Project Wildfire might have.
Great, thank you. Commissioner DeBone, yep, any other updates?
Go. So I'm on Zoom this morning and the whole video display thing went away, but it's still connected. Interesting watching the technology evolve a little bit. Just a thank you to everybody. As I say, it's a good discussion. You know, it's just like Allison and I got down to, to burner to transfer the solid waste, aiming for these fire-wise neighborhoods. If we just set direction to some of these things, and they're happening, but we've got more to do out there. As I say, this spring, my wife and I were setting up for a community meeting. I got a map created, and I was just about to invite some folks when this COVID stopped us dead in our tracks, and it's probably not quite ready time to have a community meeting. We were going to do that in our neighborhood. So I'm just letting you know, slow and steady progress is the key to this whole thing. Thank you.
Great. Stacy Lacey. I assume it's Stacy Lacey. See Stacy. Any updates?
Sorry, I couldn't figure out my mute button there. Nope, I will defer. It looks like DJ's on here for Kaufman. So.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Bob Pulley.
Thanks, Ed. First off, I wanted to thank you, Ed, and Boone for those great workshops on Firewise. Those were outstanding. I know it takes a lot of work to get that stuff done, and I, for one, really appreciate it. It was great getting to know a lot of other Firewise communities as we start our journey on FireWise. We did receive our community assessment for Mountain High, and it is now in front of the board, and the board's going to have a meeting next Tuesday night. So that'll be one of the major topics, is to get approval for how we go forward, and to make sure that our FireWise committee is going to be operational, even in this tough time of COVID, trying to get together and do things. But really appreciate your guys' hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Ray Meow.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Yeah, the FireFree program was really spectacular. I mean, we took away the Great Wall of China here. Thanks to the grant from the county, we were able to afford to do that. And we will, I guess the last thing is, I apologize to Ed for not getting my report in yet. We'll be doing that. Since Gary is not here, I'll report on some of the stuff from the Rural Fire District. We did give out a grant this last month for work to remove debris, fire fuels, and it was because the individual, the applicant, could not burn, and it met the requirements for our grant, but it's mainly because they couldn't do any burning this year, and so we decided to give them a grant for that. And to remind anybody who has a subdivision homeowners association that the Rural Fire District does have grants. It's not a matching grant, but it's a grant for about 50% of your actual costs. We need to receive a grant application. You can get that from Gary at the district headquarters. And we'll have somebody from fire department come out, do an assessment on the properties, and give their analysis of whether this meets our requirements or not. So that's something that we ought to consider as money becomes scarcer and scarcer. From Woodside Ranch, we are really concerned, a lot more concerned, since the city has decided to go ahead with their Juniper Ridge sewer and water lines. But I've gotten reports from neighbors up there on China Hat Road that a few days ago, they saw U-Haul vans and trailers actually moving into the forest area. And there's been another fire out there, which thankfully somebody jumped on immediately. But we're starting to see a migration into the forest, and that's really of concern to us. And I don't know what we can do about it except complain. So if anybody has an idea, or the county or the city can work together, I know this is a homeless problem. We really appreciate that. That's it. Thank you, Ed.
Great, thanks, Ray.
Ray, let me jump in a little bit. This is Tony DeBone. Yeah, we do have a big push at Juniper Ridge. There's kind of a culture of people setting up, on public land right now. Juniper Ridge was never allowed for camping. This is going to be a real pressure time for our community, especially with all the political layers going on right now around the world and around the country. So let's communicate and work together on this. I mean, everybody's passionate about it, but there's no real clear answer unless, real hard lines get drawn, but nobody wants that at this point either. So I hear you.
Hey, Tony, can we set up a meeting?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's get together.
I'll give you a call.
Okay.
All right, how about Paula, COCC?
Good morning, everybody. How's everyone today? I really don't have a lot to report. I just wanted to let you know that I am on the committee for reopening, and we're working through the Heck and Oregon Health Authority guidelines, working on a plan. We will probably have some in-person classes, but they're going to be very minimal. Therefore, none of our wildland classes are going to run until probably winter or spring because of that, if that. So I'm hoping for positive stuff to come. And I wanted to thank Boone and Allison and Chief Craig for being part of the urban interface class. For once, the students didn't want to knock all the trees down and cut them all down. So they actually had some really good final projects that really understood the defensible space concept and made some really good judgments on their triaging and tactical decisions. So that's all I have. And I'm actually going to be jumping off in a few to another meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it seems like it's easier to stack meetings on top of each other nowadays. Patty did send me from Sun River, sent me a quick update via the chat, just mentioning that they are in kind of recovery mode from the big windstorm that I think came right at the end of May. I haven't been through Sun River, but I've been in some of the communities right around Sun River, and I know that damage to a lot of trees and even structures was pretty significant. So I'm sure she's got her hands full with that, along with doing her regular property inspections and contracting. How about Oliver? Do you have any update for us?
Yeah, hey, good morning. When Boone went through his FireWise update, he mentioned Sundance is in the beginning process. That would be me. The challenge is we have no HOA in Sundance. And really the only way neighbors here communicate, those who don't know each other and regularly interact, is through Nextdoor. I put a post up there asking if anybody would like to join me in forming a committee. And 4 days later, I have 0 responses. So short of going door to door and begging people to get involved, not sure what to do. So if anybody has any good ideas on how I can get the ball rolling here, because I think most of my neighbors are doing the work already. So just forming a committee and making that making us eligible to apply for grants and get some guidance from experts would be really helpful and minimal work required. But I don't know if I'm making the wrong sales pitch or what. So if anybody has any ideas, I'd sure appreciate it. And that's all I've got.
And then Oliver, I do have a lady that I talked with through email several months ago. I'll pull her info back up. I've been meaning to get you guys connected together, but she's she coordinated a workforce, if you were a task force, whatever you want to call it, but went out and cleaned up along the roads and stuff in Sundance. And I'm guessing that she has a network to tie in with as well.
Great.
Maybe.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Together.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then Ed and I were talking this morning about figuring out other communities that start off kind of where you guys are and how they networked across one another too. So I think that is definitely the big lift, is trying to figure out how to form that network when you don't have one already in place.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. I think Lars from Natural Resource Conservation Service, you're next.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everybody. So I guess kind of 2 updates. Recently been meeting with the U.S. Forest Service to kind of coordinate on a USDA Joint Chiefs proposal. And that will be focusing on fuels reduction and forest health, kind of in between Bend and kind of all the way up to Camp Sherman's kind of the geographic area on that Joint Chiefs proposal. And we hope to submit the proposal in the fall. And similar to like the last Joint Chiefs effort that was down in Lapine, it'll target projects on both U.S. Forest Service land as well as private lands, and that'll help with fuels reduction and general forest health. So that's pretty exciting. On another front, I guess, I've been coordinating with ODF and other partners on a conservation implementation strategy that's kind of NRCS's way to target Farm Bill funds and this conservation implementation strategy will help landowners with implementation of forest management plans, and it has a similar kind of geographic area in between kind of Bend and Sisters area. And so there's many landowners out there that have forest management plans, through ODF and other partners. And so this strategy should help bring some funds to help with the implementation of those forest management plans. And that should we should start to see that kind of roll out in 2021. So yeah, that's all I have for right now, unless there's questions.
Great, thanks, Lars. Jody Barham.
Good morning. Let me unmute myself. And good to see all of you. It's been a while. So quick update from me. I am still working with the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the IAFC, consulting. They selected their communities across the country. So I will be working with Medford, Oregon, Leavenworth, Washington, Monument, Colorado, and Forest Hill, California on fire mitigation, outreach, and planning, and potentially an evacuation tabletop, depending on the needs of the communities there. So that was sort of slow to start. I'm also, as part of that consulting, we are updating the national RSG wildland evacuation guides. So those should be coming out here. I think we've got another round of edits, but in the next month, we'll be having those finalized and ready for departments to print. So that's been busy. I've been involved with this COVID. So in fact, I realized when I logged in, I go between my personal Zoom account and the Central Oregon Emergency Information Network account because I'm contracting with them and have been working in the Joint Information Center for Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties, and I'm still doing that and expect to be doing that for a while on all things COVID-19 related. And then just gearing up for fire season. I'm still on my Type 2 team, and we're planning and doing a lot of work around how we're going to have fire camps, and particularly in the function that I'm in with information, how the public information officers are going to be able to disseminate information and some of the challenges in rural areas where we see a lot of wildfires on the landscape. So still around in the community, but very homebound for the last few months, and nice to finally have some flexibility in my schedule to hop on these meetings and hear what you all are up to. So that's it for me.
Great, thanks. Jeff Emerald, Ben Parks and Rec.
Hey everyone, Ben Parks staff's been busy doing light fuel reduction. We just found out that Heart of Oregon is going to get back to work this week. So we'll have them working for us for the next few weeks, continuing that light fuel reduction. That's all I have, thanks.
Great, thanks Jeff. Greg, Brian, anything else from DRW? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I've got, okay, I had a grant that you guys gave me, and so that's almost done. The people that were working on that, I was working down in Sun River, so you work on my couple of lots and in between. Then another thing is, if it's okay, I'd like to have DeBone have a meeting with DeBone also, because we're having some homeless people coming into our area also from Juniper Ridge, it looks like. And then other than that, I mean, our people have been doing a lot of, they did a lot of the FireFree. You can notice that there's a lot of, they've done a lot of work, our group of people. So we feel very confident that we're doing a good job here. That's all I have.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Aaron and Todd from the Deschutes SWCD.
Hi everyone. Todd had to go to another meeting, but my name's Erin and I'm the new manager for Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District. So I'm excited to get to know everyone and be a part of this group and learn a lot more. I actually just moved over from the Forest Service. I was in the wildlife department there, but I was certified as Type 2, so I helped out on a bunch of prescribed burns and fires in the county over the last couple years. So it's great to meet everyone, and I'm excited to start getting more information about this group and learning more. And Todd wanted me to say that we're going to try to do another stab at doing a stakeholder grant in South County. which is due at the end of July. So hopefully that'll come through and we'll have more information about that in the future. So great to meet everyone. And yeah, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to your new position.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great.
Dean Richardson, any updates from Upper Deschutes area?
Good morning. I was glad to hear that that the FireFree program worked as well as it did this year. That's a lot of material. Looked like it was double. I do have to agree with Tony that if we're in, like in South County, for instance, where a number of us have acreage, that the transfer stations it doesn't work quite as well. So burning is still a great option for us. And and this year I was glad that I went out early. I had already been working for about 6 weeks before the cutoff, so I was able to burn for about 3 days, and then I was ahead for the year. As far as the Upper Deschutes River communities, we have 2 programs for defensible space I mentioned last month, and the one where we reimburse people for the first $500 worth of contractor work on their property. That program has already been maxed out. And there's some talk about trying to transfer funds from one program to another, and that's still up in the air. But we have the other program, which is for low income seniors and disabled. And not a lot of applications this year, and I was looking forward to some promotional opportunities for that. And one of them was going to be like the Mid-State has a big day each year where they have a barbecue in La Pine, and I thought that'd be a natural place to set up a table, but that's not happening. And so we don't have a lot of applications. We've started doing some property appraisals for that program, and Jim Larson did one property appraisal in one of our local neighborhoods, and then I was sent down to the La Pine CWPP to do a couple of property appraisals in one neighborhood. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about that neighborhood, which is Ponderosa Pines neighborhood, and it's off of Burgess. It's actually part of the La Pine CWPP. But I wanted to say how impressed I was with that neighborhood. To my understanding, it's the only fire-free neighborhood in the La Pine CWPP. And first thing I noticed was they have about a 1 mile access road in and out. And so that's pretty critical for their evacuation plans. And some of the area along that road has been treated and some hasn't, but I noticed that there were markings on the trees indicating that the Forest Service evidently has plans to give them a little bit better egress and exgress or whatever, so they can get in and out of there. But the neighborhood itself, I was really impressed. Those folks have done a lot of work in there. And the 2 properties that I went to assess, I had a hard time finding anything to recommend to the property owners because the work had already been done. And one of the gals there, she had a sign in her yard that's that the community had inspected her property and given her the okay. They signed off on her property, and but all I can find is some little things like she had decking and it had lattice around the decking, and I told her that, you know, it would be a good idea if she could put some like 1/8 inch metal mesh behind that so that embers couldn't get in there. But both of those properties, I just had nice conversations with the property owners because they didn't really need to do any work on their properties. And looking around that neighborhood, I can tell that they're really, they must have been making consistent efforts for quite a while. So I think that's about all I've got for this month. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, Ponderosa Pines has been one of those communities that has to have had a sustained effort from the mid to early 2000s, and it definitely shows. DJ, any updates you want to share from Forest Service BLM?
You bet. And good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody on this call. Excuse me. Just want to share a few things. Nationally, we just went to a preparedness level 3 here in the last day or so. And just so people know, that's a scale of 1 to 5, and it's kind of an indication of the amount of resources that are available to go fight fire. And so at preparedness level 3, the reason they bumped it up from a 2 to a 3 is because of the activity that's going on down in New Mexico and Arizona area, as well as what's happening up in Alaska. We are an exporter of resources right now. We are providing some resources down to the Southwest there, and as well as I believe today a jet load of firefighters are heading up to Alaska to give them a hand out of Redmond, I believe. Also, this Thursday, we're going to have a discussion with our partners and cooperators. It's kind of our yearly talk about our upcoming fire season to get on the same page. Certainly this year, it's a little bit different with the COVID around. We want to have some of those discussions. In addition to that, I know Alex may update you a little more on this, but we're having a lot of conversations with our local county health authorities here in the Tri-County area, as well as Klamath County, as we move forward in preparation for possibly bringing in incident management teams to fight fires here in Central Oregon. Across the region, between Oregon and Washington, a lot of discussion about how we're going to fight fire, and a lot of lessons learned from the Southwest that we're leaning into as they start fighting fire down there with incident management teams. And that's been very informative for us on how we can approach this in the COVID environment. As Lars mentioned, we are also deeply involved with the Joint Chiefs proposal that's going on, and look forward to getting that in place in the future, working between our federal lands and our private lands, because as we know, fire knows no boundaries. And what Boone showed today, I think people are starting to get educated here in Central Oregon. It's been a tremendous outpouring of effort there, and we're certainly appreciative of that from a first responder perspective, and one of the agencies that have a big part of that. So appreciate everybody's efforts there. And we're currently working through our grants and agreements people to get all of our local fire cooperative agreements in place, and with all of our local fire departments. I think there's about 12 of them that we have to put in place. They're all into our grants and agreements, folks, and we're waiting to get signatures on those and move forward. And that's what I have. And Alex can pick up whatever I missed. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Bob Madden, Bend Fire.
Good morning. My camera isn't working. Can you hear me? I'm mute. Am I mute?
Yes. Yep.
Good. Nothing really to add. You know, we're moving forward. The city government is dealing right now with some significant budget cutbacks for the second biennium of our fiscal year here. So we're going through exercises relating to staffing, matrix drawdown, things like that, which will impact our levels of service. But we're moving forward and optimistic that we can continue to maintain the same level of service. Personal note, I'm retiring into the month, so this will be my last Project Wildfire meeting, but I will still stay involved locally. I'll be staying involved with the Deschutes Collaborative, representing the Central Oregon Fire Chiefs, and look forward to seeing y'all out there in a different light.
Thanks for your service, Bob. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Okay, guys, pleasure. Good to work with everybody.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, Allison Green.
Good morning, everyone. Just a couple of kind of quick updates. DJ covered one of the things we have going on kind of in the near term is we are having essentially kind of a pre-season discussion about how we can integrate response, and also with the backdrop of COVID, even though our response is very tied in and does a great job here locally, we have a new added complication this year. Also been trying to keep my eye on the fall prescribed fire season. This spring we had tried to plan to have a few in-person field trips during prescribed fire implementation. But with COVID and no prescribed fire happening, those tours obviously didn't happen. Also been busy giving presentations, did a webinar with OSU, and a few other things. Folks are very, very interested in fire adaptation and how they can take steps right now when a lot of us are home. So I think generally that's what I had for today.
All right, and Alex.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'll just clean up a little bit around what DJ was talking about. So, and feeding off of Allison, our prescribed fire pause this spring because of COVID was of course, a big hit on our program. One of the effects that we realized from that we weren't necessarily anticipating is how much our prescribed fire season helps in our resources readiness for wildfire season. So with their inability to go out and practice and go through the motions of everything that they do, crew cohesion, communication, message passing, all those kind of things that become really important in a chaotic wildfire environment, we didn't get to practice that. And so as we've started to enter into fire season, and as DJ said, we're sending resources out, they're really feeling the effects of it. And that's something that I think nobody really anticipated how important that is for us, not only to do the work and get the accomplishment of prescribed burning, but just in preparation for the wildfire season with our resources. So feeling the effects of that, and we'll continue that into fire season. Spending a lot of time with large fire planning, as DJ said. I have a meeting here this morning, a little bit right after this one, with the Deschutes County Health Authority, and we're really trying to get to all the county health authorities to ask the questions of what does it look like when we potentially bring 500,000 firefighters from outside the area into a fire camp, into an ICP in Central Oregon. If we have cases of COVID, if we have a very transient population of firefighters. What is that going to look like to the counties? What are their concerns? How are we going to operate in conjunction or in coordination and collaboration with those county health authorities in the world of COVID? So still working on a lot of planning, still learning a lot from what's happening in the Southwest and Alaska. Every time a team goes out, there's that generates a whole lot of lessons learned, documents that we're piling through right now and seeing how they fit into our plans, what is actually realistic to implement and what is not. And so lots and lots of moving parts. And then as DJ mentioned, we're exporting a lot of resources. Why that's important is, and why it's so different is every year we tend to send a lot of stuff off this time of year to go help others. What we're seeing this year is as states are in different levels of reopening or still being closed and still having wildfires needing resources. For instance, every resource that goes into Alaska right now has to get COVID tested. And so we're sorting our way through what it looks like to send resources to certain areas, depending on what their level of COVID is, and how we work through that with not only sending resources but bringing resources back into the county, into our organization, and what that looks like with potential quarantining or high risk exposure potential, depending on how they travel, where they were, and active COVID cases in those locations. So lots of moving parts for us, a whole nother level of risk management for us this year, as everybody else. And as we come into fire season, we'll continue to work very closely with everybody and to ensure that we're keeping our firefighters safe and keeping the community as safe as we can with our organization. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Alex. So at this point, if I missed you, it's because I didn't think you had an update, or you said you didn't have an update. But is anybody else needing a second for a go back, or did I miss anybody? And if not, I think we're just about to wrap up. I guess I'd say for me, the only other thing we did, Boone covered a lot about what we've been working on. The other one other update is that we are actively still working on finishing up the first Joint Chiefs projects in the south part of the county. We have 2 neighborhood projects this spring, and those are in Deschutes River Rec Home Sites number 6, which is by Lapine State Park, and a neighborhood we haven't worked with that I'm excited to work with. That's called Forest View, which is just north of Burgess Road, a little bit west of Lapine. And between those, I think we have, I'll total it up when it's all done. We've got a contractor out there chipping material right now, but I think we'll have somewhere close to about 80 to 90 lot owners that have done their defensible space work. And the debris that they've created is pretty significant. Actually had a contractor that had to bring in an extra, almost like a log loader. The piles were piled really neat, but they were, sometimes 6 to 8 feet tall, and very difficult to get back apart again just because of the volume. So good response from those neighborhoods and those were really what I would consider very high risk neighborhoods with very thick lots of lodgepole and ponderosa pine. So we're just wrapping up those projects, should hopefully be done by the end of this month. So with that, I don't think that I see anybody else with updates. So we will go ahead and conclude our meeting, and thanks everybody for spending the hour and 15 minutes with us today to try to keep everybody up to date on what's going on, keep a little bit of momentum going during these challenging times here. So everybody have a great day, and we will meet again next month. We'll see how we can meet, but look for the update from Boone on the agenda. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks everybody.